Cargo sits at the very heart of the non-combat Star Citizen experience. And as it continues to evolve in the upcoming Alpha 323 and beyond, its next major evolution is less about the places you'll go and more about the ones you'll start and come back to. Now, hangars, whether they're persistent, instanced, personal, or staging, make up the next frontier of Cargo gameplay. And we went to Chad and his team for an early look at where they're going and how they're progressing.
Now, I will say, hangars are one of the things that I have been looking forward to the most ever since I started playing the game. Like, right from day one, I was like, personal hangars. Because when you buy your first or when you buy any ship from the website, it comes with the ship, often some AUEC or UEC, I should say, sometimes a paint, and usually a personal hangar. And there's 4 different size hangars, and it tells you which size comes with that ship. So there has been the plan for them to have personal hangars for a very, very long time. But it's just, as you'll find out, it's not been an easy process for them. But I cannot wait for this. And I tell you now, that first Alpha 323 stream, or first 2, will cover character creation in detail, and there will be a lot of time spent literally just in the hangar. So that could even cover 2 streams, or if I do it on YouTube, a long YouTube stream. So be prepared for that.
Let's
Oh,
find out more.
So yeah, we've had a couple ISCs before to talk about the new cargo and hangars features coming, but now that we're here and about to release things, we want to talk a bit about how that impacts your play experience, even if you don't care at all about cargo. So let's start with persistent hangars. What are they and what does that mean? So a persistent hangar is an instance hangar that is going to be assigned to you whenever you select your home location when logging into the game for the first time for a patch. When that happens, what we do is we determine the largest ship that you have and then entitle to you a persistent hangar that's of the size needed to facilitate that ship.
okay. So, couple of points, couple of questions that come out of that first little bit. First of all, you get assigned your hangar when you first log into the game and choose your home location. Now, as far as I'm aware, that will remain just the 4 cities. So, Orison, Area 18, New Babbage, and Hurston. I don't know if they ever plan to expand it so that any of the space stations can be your starting location. Presumably down the line, you'll be able to have a starting location in other systems, although I wouldn't necessarily expect all systems to be available as a starting location. But that is the initial question for me there is, are they going to expand the starting locations? I don't expect them to for 323. I think if they're going to do that, it will come in 4.0, maybe 4.1, maybe even further down the line. But yeah, let's carry on.
Whenever you go into that hangar into the game, that hangar at your home location is always your hangar, and you'll be able to use it like your home. You'll be able to keep things in the hangar, you'll be able to leave things around, you can invite friends in, you can treat it like your own little oasis.
So, again, coming out of that, so once you've been assigned a hangar, that is your hangar. Obviously, these are instanced. So the idea is, let's say you're on Orison and you're assigned a hangar at Hangar Bay 1. From what he says there, every time you are at Orison, you'll be going to Hangar Bay 1. And there will be other players whose hangars are also assigned to Hangar Bay 1. But once you enter the hangar, that's when you enter your instance. A big question that I had, and I'm going to ask it for Star Citizen Live next week, is let's say you've got 2 players, both in their hangar, both in Hangar 1 at the same time in their own instant, and by some weird coincidence, they decide to fly out of their hangar at the same time. Now, Hangar 1 has a physical location on Orison. It's numbered on the outside. You could point at it on a map. So it's a fixed location. If two players are flying out the same hangar bay doors at the same time, how is the game dealing with that? Is it going to queue your departure so that whoever's pressed the request button first leaves first, and then the second person has a timer that says you cannot leave the hangar for X amount of amount of time? Does that mean that the player leaving is going to have X amount of time to leave? So that is, for me, a really big question about how instance hangars are going to work. And when they put up the thread on Spectrum for questions, I am absolutely going to be asking that, because the last thing any of us want is to be leaving our hangars and suddenly two ships come out of instant space into shared space in exactly the same spot, and boom. So again, I have no doubt that they've thought about this, that they've decided how they're going to work around it. They just haven't told us yet. So, I want to ask so that we know what is going to happen there.
So let's talk about for these personal hangars, how do you actually get into them?
Please proceed to side landing bay.
You can make a request via ATC for landing, and when we do that, we'll check to see if you have any personal hangars entitled to you. You'll be able to enter in using largely the same methodology that you do now, land, and then you can just hang out in there.
So there is another question. I think it's an easy answer because I think the answer is actually quite obvious, but I'm going to put it forward here. So they scan to see if you've got a hangar at that location. So what it also does is it scans to see the size of the ships that you have. So let's say you've only got an Avenger Titan and an Aurora. It's probably only going to assign you the smallest hangar because that's all you'll need. If you've got a Hercules, you're probably going for a large hangar, is my guess there. One of the questions I do have is, does that include ships that you have bought in game? Now, again, I assume that it does. I assume that it doesn't just scan your account for the ships that you've bought with raw cash. It scans your account that is in the game at the time to see what ships you bought. So say you started with an Aurora and you've gone and bought a Hammerhead, it will rescale the hangar for the Hammerhead. Again, will it assign the hangar size based on the ship you're flying? Say you're still flying the Aurora, or will it just scan the account and say, well, this person's got a Hammerhead, so we're just going to assign them that hangar now, and that's what it'll be? Because that means that it'll be dynamic, particularly for people who've just started the game or who have only ever bought one of the basic pledges. If they buy a bigger ship in game 2 months down the line, then their hangar will upgrade at that stage. That's an assumption. I think it's a safe assumption, but there will definitely be some questions around how that works.
As far as what can you actually do with your personal hangar and what kinds of things can you decorate with it, what we're going to do is allow you to call anything in your inventory up via that freight elevator. You can pick it up off the freight elevator either with your hands or using the tractor beam and just screw it about your location however you pick.
I was watching the Info Runners video on this before stream today, and one of the guys did point out that historically the game has had an issue with items that you place in the world kind of getting really janky and jumping around and glitching through floors and stuff. And he is worried, is that going to happen in our hangars, especially with the amount of stuff that we're going to be able to place? Are our hangars just going to end up being full of boxes and items that are just skittering all over the place? It is a very fair question, and it will really come down to the stability of the game, um, how the new Vulkan renderer works, whether that's going to settle things down so that the GPUs can handle the load better. Um, but it's something that I hadn't thought of until I watched these video, and I think it's a really, really, really fair point. And yeah, go and check out the intro runners as well because those guys are great.
Also in the hangars, you'll notice several new kiosks. We have the freight elevator kiosk, which has a brand new UI and inventory system to deal with.
Let's have a quick look at this new UI. So let me just come back briefly. There we go. So there we go. We've got the actual overall UI for the freight elevator, and it's showing like how somebody has laid out the various different containers on their hangar. And it looks like it's 32. So that's 32. That's 48 SCU wide. And that's 16, 24, 30, 40, 72 SCU length. I'm either doing my maths wrong there, or that is huge. And then if we go on to the next UI,
Large volume.
and this is the overall freight elevator one. He does mention this a bit more in a moment, but so we've got the grid for the cargo elevator. We can request the platform. We've got the platform inventory view, which I think is this screen. Auto arrange, so you can choose where to place certain boxes of items on the elevator. So you could maybe put bigger items at the back, smaller items at the front. It'll be a little bit like arranging things on Tetris kind of thing. Or you can do it as auto arrange, which, I can imagine a lot of people will use that. You've got the capacity of the elevator there, select all, unselect all, the button to send items to warehouse. So say you've taken things off your ship, put on the elevator. Once you're loaded up, you click that button and it all sends down to your warehouse. And then the other side is what's in your warehouse. And you've got the opposite. You've got the center platform, select all, unselect all. Interesting, the username one. And that makes me wonder if, say, I'm in a party with 2 or 3 of my friends, we've all got our homes here. Does this mean that if we're all in a party together, and let's say I'm playing with James, could I select James's name on there and call up stuff from his inventory on the cargo elevator? Could we do it all on the same cargo elevator so that we've looked at mine, then we've looked at James's, then we've got Aiden, and we look at his? I'm very intrigued by that button, and I want to see more about that, and definitely something I'm going to take a look at when 323 hits. We've obviously got filters for the types of items, rearrange the sorting button, search function, hallelujah. And we can apparently extend the platform and the warehouse to see more storage, but really nice looking UI, very much, for the most part, very self-explanatory. I think people who do cargo trading, commodity trading, will use this a lot, and maybe organizations when they're planning like raids and attacks and stuff. Definitely going to be very, very useful.
Of cargo.
You're going to have on the left-hand side a section that is showing the contents of the platform itself. And on the right-hand side, similar inventory layout with all your armor and weapons and items.
And it looks so nice. It looks really nice.
What you want to spawn in the freight elevator. The freight elevator then comes up, and then you can start doing like loading and unloading of various cargo into your ship and so on.
If you're considerate about how you're loading things and you're trying to optimize your loading times, it'll give you a lot of power as far as, for example, making sure that certain kinds of things are front loaded.
I don't know if we're going to get those trolleys. I really hope we do. I really hope every hangar comes with a couple of trolleys available so that you can load stuff onto it and wheel it onto your ship. I have the Drake Mule, so finally my mule will finally actually have a kind of use. We've also seen for the new distribution centers, some like hover bed type trolleys on there as well. Again, would be really great if we could either just get some of those in our hangars, or if they could just be commodities for us to buy. I'm quite happy to spend a few UEC on buying trolleys that I need to be able to move things. Obviously, we've also got our tractor beams. Part of me would kind of like to see a tractor beam built into the hangar as well, but I don't necessarily see that happening. But it would be quite an interesting idea.
Loaded on the platform to make your multi-crew loading as streamlined as possible. And anything that's in your inventory, you're going to be able to call up. Some things you might have to put into an inventory container box. We're talking 8, 16, 24, even 32 SU size container boxes that you can put large items in. Now you can raise that up on the platform, including in collections, transfer that very quickly onto your ship, and then take them to another location. In your personal hangar, you'll also have access to several other kiosks, starting with the item bank.
Which are another form of kiosk, which you could almost consider like a small freight elevator in a way, in that you can retrieve personal items such as clothing, armor, and weapons.
I think it was 2, maybe 3 weeks ago, they did state that the original plan to be able to recover unique items in 323 has had to be put back. So that's basically the items that we will have bought from the website. So I've got armors, I've got a couple of gun skins. Those sort of things at the moment, when you lose them in game, you lose them until there's a reset. And the whole idea was that unique item recovery was going to be included in 323. And I assume that would have come through the item bank. They haven't really covered it in this video. My working assumption is that aspect of it still won't be in 323, but it might be a nice surprise if they turn around and say, oh, actually, no, now that we've implemented the item bank in general, it's possible. But I'm skeptical at the moment. But this, in general, though, is a good idea. And it's another part of moving the handling of all items to being almost 100% physicalized, very little magically appearing in different places. Yeah, everything is going to be physicalized. It's not going to be a case of pressing buttons and things magically appear in inventories anymore. It's not how the game is going to work going forward.
Because the item that's being delivered will be delivered in a tray that's in the same machine. So you interact that kind of like you interact with a loot box and you get that out. So no other player can actually physically get anything from your local inventory.
And these item banks can be found not just within the hangars, but also the wider location, such as your hubs and other key areas of a location.
Having one of those in the very first hab is so important. Most of us, when we first load in, one of the first things we do is press I to open the local inventory and then start putting stuff on from there. So the fact that we're going to have this physical location where we need to do that from is great. Now, we do know in this week's video, the local inventory screen is not going away. It's staying, at least for now. So we'll probably still be able to press I and do stuff that way. I am going to do my best to use the facilities that are available, so these kiosks, rather than what I see as a bit of a shortcut in just pressing a keyboard. Shortcut, basically. But I love the fact that they've got them in that first room that you're going to be in. Then at various intervals between there and the hangar, you're going to come across them as well. So that, you know, at some stage, we could end up with like 100 people at the same starting location once the server sizes do increase. And we don't want there to be queues of people at the kiosk. So they're putting as many of these around as is sensible and possible, so that it minimizes that kind of waiting time for lots of different players to do it. But they look really cool, perfectly fit in with the aesthetic, and very keen to see how well these things work.
To retrieve your personal items.
Since you can't interact with your inventory anymore at any given time, It means like we need to have enough item banks around each location so you don't block each other from accessing a terminal, right?
It's just a quicker way to get a quick gun or a few meta pins or your armor without having to load it up from the freight elevator. And the
So I think what he did confirm there is that the plan is to get rid of the local inventory. It's just that this week's video seems to contradict that for the short term. So it may be that in 3.23 we still have both available. 4.0, the I button may no longer open the inventory, which means it can be assigned to something else.
last kiosk that I want to talk about is the ASOP terminal.
Which we have positioned in the hangar, so you can request your ships from within the hangar and not just the spaceport.
So they will still remain in the spaceport. So if you don't have a personal hangar in your location, you can request your ship also from there.
What we're doing is we're changing the way that the ships spawn in the game.
You can now request your ships from within the hangar and they will appear to you, but they won't just come out of thin air. What happens is the whole of the floor will open up.
You get this like amazing view of the hangar, the lights dim, the doors open.
And the landing platform will be rising up towards you.
This was my absolute dream for Hangars. I was really hoping this was the route that they would go down. It makes sense. It's logical that this is how it works. The idea of being in a hangar, you request a ship and suddenly, pop, there's the ship in front of you. Just doesn't work for any game, really. And certainly not for Star Citizen, which is trying to be as realistic as it can be. So the fact that we've got these elevators bringing our ships into the bay, brilliant. Like they teased us a couple of weeks ago with just a screenshot of the hangar bay floor with the doors. And like from that moment onwards, I think we all knew what was coming. But just seeing this in action, it's just, oh my God, it's perfect.
And your ship will be there.
We try to balance it in a way that it doesn't take too much time for you, but also that it feels like it has the right weight to it, but also you don't have to wait for it too long.
And look at that hologram around the elevator as well. I hope we do actually get that there's kind of like this warning thing so that you don't accidentally step onto the hangar bay doors as they're opening, or worse, once they're fully open, you don't accidentally step over the edge. As he says there, it looks like the elevator has a decent speed to it as well, so you're not going to be sitting there for 60 seconds waiting for your ship to come up. It looks like it's only going to take like 10, 15, 20 seconds, which is great.
So now you have a seamless transition and a realistic way of storing your ships away.
Additionally, you can do clever things like call up a smaller vehicle, such as a ground vehicle, drive it off, and then call up a larger vehicle. Then you'll have access to your ground vehicles without having to go to another location.
Again, a couple of weeks ago, they said that calling in ground vehicles to your hangar was having to be delayed to a different patch or different update. This seems to contradict that. It seems like we will be able to do that on this main hangar elevator. I always had the impression that we were going to be calling up ground vehicles via the cargo elevator. And I don't know if that is still the longer term plan, or whether that they've resolved the issue that did initially say, no, we're going to have to delay this now. And this is actually the solution. I may or may not ask that question for the live next week. I'm not sure. I'm going to have a lot of questions for them, and I don't want to like post too many and seem greedy. But then again, a lot of the questions that I'll have, a lot of other people have. But it looks like we'll actually be able to call in our ground vehicles, drive them off, park them off to one side, then call in whatever ship we're going to be using to then load them on. Part of me would like to see them use the cargo elevator or a dedicated ground vehicle elevator, but a dedicated ground vehicle elevator would probably require too much of a rework of the interior of these hangars. Whereas using the cargo elevators, I think, makes a little bit more sense to me. But we'll see.
You'll be able to call up multiple ships and maybe have one person fly off with one ship, call another one, have another person in your party fly up with another ship. Or you can just call up a ship, change your mind, and then call up a different ship without having to leave or anything like that. It gives you a lot of flexibility. And I can already tell what some of you are thinking right now. We're not going to let the system like eat your body and store it into the inventory or anything like that. We'll make sure to account for that such that if there's a blocking change that happens, we'll stop the process, go
How
back
many
up to the
times will I
default
do
state,
that
and
with
then
my
tell
mule?
the player about the issue so that they can account for it. If you do want to jump into the platform just before it closes and fall to your death, you can fall to your death if you want to.
I promise now I will test that. First day, I will throw myself into the open hangar doors just to do it. You know, why not?
So this is really cool, and we're really happy to get this in. It's been discussed for some years now, and it's been a very tricky thing to fit in, and certain tech's required to be able to do it. You'd be able to have this hangar your own space and call your own ships and do a lot more within the hangar now.
Now that we're adding all of this new facility to the hangars in the game, allowing them to be persistent, adding these freight elevators, adding the ship platform, there's a lot of more things that we have to have in these hangars for them to be useful for what we're adding.
So the hangar sizes had to increase quite a bit. We did not want to do that originally in the beginning, but soon when we did prototyping, we figured out that not all the hangars, as at like the low-tech hangars in particular, are quite old by this point. Not all of them were to the same standards or metrics. So we figured that with the landing pad now going down, you had this gap for like quite some time before the doors close. So there was a very narrow walkway for the player sometimes. So we had to rejig some things and made it actually larger.
So the large and XL have had significant size changes. So the XL is about 20% larger, and the large is about 30% larger. So certain ships that were a little tight can now fit a lot more easily.
So you don't feel like your wings almost
Carrack was
scratch the walls of
definitely
it.
an example.
So it feels a bit more natural and better to the play experience to land in your hangar now.
Few points to pick up from that. Very interesting point made right at the start of that little segment is there's a lot of new stuff that they want to come into the hangars, and I don't think it's necessarily all the stuff that we're seeing in 3.23. Obviously, we already know that we can buy decorations from the website. I have a couple that we're going to be able to place in various different places in the hangars, but it almost sounds like there's a few other things that they're planning to add in somewhere down the line. That could be anything to do with like finally implementing the medical elevators that some hangars have. It may be a sleeping area. I know a lot of people are asking if we've got persistent hangars, can we log out in our persistent hangar and load back in at our persistent hangar rather than at the HABs? And I know people will ask that for the live. So are they going to be adding in a sleeping area? Is there going to be like areas where we can display armor sets, weapons? Are we going to be able to like place little seating areas, especially as base building expands? Is there going to be an element of that mechanic that works for within hangars? So a lot of good stuff coming there. And then of course the resizing of the hangars, because of all of that extra stuff needs space. And certainly for the small hangars, there's going to be limited space to do that anyway. So you're not really going to be able to decorate a small hangar that significantly. But if you're lucky enough to have the large or extra large hangars, it's a lot of extra space that they've added. 20% to the extra large and 30% to the large is a lot of space. They're kind of going to be luxury. He also briefly mentioned the different archetypes of hangars. So the low tech he mentioned there at some point. And at the moment, hello Jake, you good? At the moment, when you buy the ship, there's 4 different types of hangars you can buy. And I can't remember all the names, but they're basically different levels of luxury in a way. So you've got your very basic one, your self-land hangar. You've got your Revel and York hangar. I'm going to remember a couple of them. You've got your AeroView hangar, which is the type of hangar you see at Orison quite a lot of the time. So the question is, are at the moment they denote a specific size, but it now is a question of, are there now going to be 4 different sizes of AeroView hangar, for example? And then whatever ship, will you then get to choose which one you have? Lot of questions about how that is going to change.
The medium is the same, but taller. And the small has not been changed. But we have classified ships to fit into the medium that were once classified as small. So
That's a really important point, because there are certainly ships that on the face of it are small, but in a small hangar, they're just too big. And again, shout out to the info runners on their video on this. Is one of them mentioned the Sulan, the alien ship, which is a tall ship, narrow profile, but tall. And that would have been classed as small before. That's definitely one of the ones that's been reclassified as medium. I can guarantee it, because of the height, and they've increased the height of the medium hangars. So that kind of makes sense. But if you think about other ships that might be classified as small but aren't really, you've probably got, I don't know, the Prospector might still be small, it might not be. I'm wondering if something like, I don't know, the MSR, I think, would probably have been a medium anyway. Definitely wouldn't have been classified as small. I'm really trying to think about various different ships now. I hope at some point they publish a list of, this ship is small, or these ships are small, these ships are medium, these ships are large, and these ships are extra large. I'd really hope they make that available publicly so that we get an idea, hopefully not too far down the line.
So hopefully a
Excuse
much
me.
better player experience than there has been before. And it's been interesting to take the design of a elevator and the door and extrapolate that across multiple sizes. So in some cases you can kind of widen out the door and use the same shapes, and in some cases you need to think really about how those shapes work, and sometimes they don't work within a small door, for example, when it did work in a much wider door. So we've had.
And as I said earlier, they didn't want to have to change the sizes of the hangars. Like, those things are kind of fixed in place at the moment. They've got whole spaceports, whole cities built, not necessarily built around these, but they kind of are. And this represents a really fundamental change to how some of those spaces now fit into those cities, and presumably into space stations as well. So they've had to really put a lot of work into doing that, and that's got to be part of the reason why this has maybe taken a bit longer to get round to it, because it's not just designing something new and fitting it to the ships. It's the whole environment is now having to change to be able to fit these in. If you even think about the way a ship elevator is going to work, that's going to necessitate a space underneath the hangar for the ships to be stored. So if you think of somewhere like Orison, which is up in the clouds, how's that going to look visually from the outside? Or is it a case of that's something they're going to conveniently not deal with? But certainly on the ground facility, somewhere like Hurston or Area 18, where a lot of the hangars are already basically at ground level, you could imagine there's like a vast garage underneath the hangars where your ships are stored. Orison, a little bit different.
Had to play around with that and keep them looking consistent with each other, but also adapt those shapes to work for each size.
So this is an actualization of a long-term goal for this entire cargo career, to make the whole thing feel more real. It means that the whole experience is going to allow for manual loading. It'll also feel more rewarding because it'll give you more interesting choices to make throughout the process. It'll make multi-crewing a more interesting and useful experience. It's going to just make the whole experience a more skill-intensive and interesting.
Definitely will
and
do.
Tactile. Another thing that we've talked about is automated loading in the games. This allows you to still do commodity trading without needing to actually move the boxes yourself. It will be an
Really important, like super, super important. Like I've done some of the commodity trading before. It's incredibly relaxing. It's also very profitable. But what makes it profitable at the moment is that you can go to a location, buy a load of stuff, go back to your ship and it's already on your ship, fly to where you're going to sell it, store your ship, not even necessarily store your ship, you can just leave it there, go to the sales terminal, sell it, and it disappears from your ship. The new system where everything is being physicalized means with the new system, with everything being physicalized, that means a lot of the time it's going to be call things up via a cargo elevator once you bought it, manually move it onto your ship, fly, get to the location, unload everything onto the cargo elevator, then go and sell it. But automation kind of helps solve what will definitely be a problem for some people. Like there would be some people who just would not engage with trading because of the extra amount of time that this will add on. And I completely get that because a lot of people have a limited amount of time to play. So automation, massively important for giving people that option to still do something that they enjoy doing without that extra time penalty.
option in the commodity terminal. Whenever you go and you pick the destination inventory, you'll be confronted with several options. One is the location inventory. The next will be all your ships that are at the location. If you choose a ship, you'll have the option to have it be automatically unloaded or loaded for you, of course, with an added cost. The ship has to be stored to allow for the transfer, and it will be time locked while that transfer is occurring. Different locations in the game will have different amounts of time. Places that are more optimized for trade are going to allow for faster transfer. You'll be able to still do the trading. You just have to wait a little bit and pay a bit more money, so your profits won't be quite as good in that case.
So there will still be a time penalty. It just won't necessarily be the same amount of time that would take you individually to do all the loading yourself. The plan eventually, I think, is to actually have NPCs that when you do this automation, NPCs come to your hangar and do all the loading and unloading for you. But that's a little way down the line. This is a really good initial way of getting around that and still allowing for that automation within what they've built so far. Who knows? This may end up working so well that this becomes the default and they maybe don't necessarily need to go down the whole hiring NPCs to do it for you. But it certainly is a really neat way to solve what could have been a little bit of a sticking point for some people.
Once the automatic loading process is finished, you can just go to the ASOP terminal in the hangar, access it, raise it, and go off, and you're on your way. If you care about cargo, this is going to be transformational. But even if you're not interested in cargo at all, it's still a foundational change for the game that fundamentally changes principles about inventory, physicality, and your play experience.
The work's ongoing. We're nearly there. I think the team's done a great job on this. It's been tricky to get it working as it should be.
It's a big milestone for the game that's been years in the making and coming. While I'm here to talk about it today, there's been a large number of teams across the entire company that have helped. Everybody from art, animation, VFX, through to all of the gameplay teams, engine teams. We've had a huge effort from Austin, Montreal, Los Angeles, Frankfurt, Manchester. It's been a big endeavor. So I want to thank everyone that's been helping to see this vision through, and I'm really looking forward to getting this into your hands so that you can play.
As am I. Like, as I said, this is one of the features that I personally am the most excited about for 323. This and the distribution centers are like right at the top of my list for features to look forward to. And I will spend a lot of time in my hangar. I guarantee it. I will probably start doing trading because of the opportunities that these hangars present. Probably not on stream so much. It'll be something that I do in my own time, be an alternative doing salvage all the time. But I really, really cannot wait to be able to get into my own hangar as soon as possible. So literally the moment I have Wave 1 access, I'll be doing it. I'll absolutely be doing it. I'll record whatever it is I'm doing. I'll be recording my reactions. I'll definitely obviously be streaming it as well, but it's just an amazing step forward. And what he said there, the fact that this has taken people from across the entire team of developers to be able to implement is it really shows how much has had to go into this and why it's such a big deal and why it wasn't done 3-4 years ago. It's because it's a real fundamental change to how you're going to play the game. And it's really going to it's the next step in making Star Citizen feel like what Star Citizen is about. And they've not even really gone into too much there about like how you invite other players into your hangar. Presumably you're going to have to be in a party. Let's say a question I have about that is, let's say it's me and Aidan. We've both been assigned our hangar at Hangar 1 on Orison. We ride down in an elevator together. Whose hangar do we go into? How do we know whose hangar? Does it become a shared hangar? Because we saw that terminal where you could select the player. Lot of questions around that I'm, again, questions to ask them next week for Star Citizen Live. But honestly, this is a transformational feature, and I assume it's going to potentially impact the current tutorial as well, because the tutorial takes you down to a hangar and just straight into a ship. Have to wonder if they're now going to have to rewrite that part of the tutorial, or if they're still going to do the same and then maybe do a hangar tutorial further down the line. But yeah, I genuinely cannot wait to get my hands on this. Well, thank you everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed that video. It's a different style of video for me, so I'd be really, really grateful for any feedback you can have, whether you liked me doing this kind of not quite reaction but coverage of an Inside Star Citizen, whether you'd actually like to see me do a live reaction like on the first time I watch some of those videos. I can look into doing one of those. Of course, if you have any feedback, any comments about the hangars and the cargo elevators and what you're looking forward to in the upcoming Alpha 3.23 patch, then please go ahead, leave those comments down below. And of course, it wouldn't be a YouTube video if I didn't ask you to subscribe to the channel, give it a like if you enjoyed the video, and come back next time. I'll see you all soon.